Okay, you guys can see? All right, so we are going to dive into the mother and our birth story and emerging from the depths and rebirthing ourselves into our true frequency. So the aspect of this that we're really going to be tuning to is basically like the interconnection of our fears around judgments, our fears around being seen, our fears around being heard, all the things that come with like really being in our true power, and how this is so interconnected with our birth story. Because when we're birthing anything into the world, whether it's a relationship, whether it's a mission, a project, a friendship, a sisterhood, this container, anything, it's going to bring up our birth story. It's going to bring up where it began. Because when you put this into perspective, coming into this world is a traumatic experience in itself. Like we're coming into like this like crazy, toxic, very like patriarchal, masculine society. Like we're born into it. So, but when we're in the womb, we're literally just like the light of God. So as soon as we're born, we're kind of like born into like we're coming to density. Like we come into this density, we come into our body, we come into this physical plane where like we're dropped in and we're just like, oh, like I wanna go back. Like I want to go back to where it felt light. And the birth story, like understanding the energetics, so not getting too caught up in like the concepts or anything, understanding the energetics and the somatics of my birth story has completely transformed the ways that I show up and the ways that I take, like if I feel rejected, if I feel abandoned, if I feel whatever, the ways that I now am able to be with this without collapsing into my emotional states is like profound. I always knew a little pieces of my birth story, but I would laugh about it like, ha 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 ha. My mom didn't know she was pregnant with me for 6 months. Like, ha 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 ha. Yeah, like the ways that kind of went into my reality is wild. So if you don't know your birth story right now, that's okay. Our homework is going to be to kind of like play around with that. It could be a great way to like connect with your mom. I know some of you don't feel that connected to my mom. I know one of you on here obviously is not able to ask. But asking like your grandparents or anything of that sort to kind of like get a feel for a little any of the details that you feel that would kind of like come apart. I know one of you has shared with me like you were like premature. So it's like if you were premature, like the ways that that can show up in your reality. Like if I was premature in my birth, then maybe I'm like really premature in the ways that I show up in the world, right? There's just so many ways that we could take that. So we'll kind of go into that. And it's really trippy, like as I dive in the ways that it connects. Part of my genius is being able to interconnect like all of it and kind of like make it to where we can just come back to this energetic perspective and make it less complicated. So let me go. So what if, play with this with me, what if all you had to do was see yourself, receive yourself, and be yourself? What if that's all we had to do? What if it wasn't up to other people to see us? What if others were just a figment of our imagination? Like, let's play with that one. What would that look like if you saw yourself? How would you show up if you truly saw yourself through the ways that God saw you? What if you received yourself before you needed to be received? What if you were just being yourself without needing a permission slip? Our only job is to learn to belong in our sovereign body. So breathe into that with me. Like really breathe into your body and this with me. Like breathe into the liberation that comes from knowing like my only job here is to learn to belong within my body, this thing that that is going to be with me for the rest of my life. Like this vessel is the one thing that I won't get rid of until our physical death, right? Like this is the one thing that we can't escape from. So we might as well learn to belong in it and to express it and to have fun with it. Because like life is way too short for us to be suffocating inside of ourselves. So what if? What if reality was just like a figment of your imagination and you could just be anything that you wanted to be? I did not have drugs before this. This is just reality. I did have a little bit of caffeine, but. So breathing into that with me. I don't know how to, how do I be able? Okay. I'm just making sure you guys aren't putting anything in the chat. Okay. So let's go to the next. So here's what we're going to kind of dive into today. I didn't want to make this too long because we're going to have the group chat. We have the Voxer group chat to like keep this going. So I wanted to keep it pretty like to the point. But we're going to go into what does the mother wound represent? So our birth story is really connected to the mother wound in itself. What does the mother wound represent? Why our birth story? We'll go into like what's happening in the fetus in the womb and what's happening in those initial weeks that were being like formed, and how this is when our root chakra, so that part of us that we were tuning to at the beginning of the call, this is when the root chakra is being formed, is in the womb. Like we are forming our root, we are forming our energy centers before we're even born. And so I'll share about my birth story and give you guys some like life examples. So that way you can kind of like see an example of the ways that I'm able to move through a lot of the things that I really used to struggle with. We'll interconnect on where this creates deep psyche wounding, bloodline regeneration. So really going into like a different aspect of our lineage. Hold on. I think Cassie disappeared, but it's okay, we'll keep going. Interconnect on where this creates deep psyche wounding, bloodline regeneration, how the root chakra disconnection is really correlated with like the generational aspect of this journey. So we'll start by bringing awareness and choosing new, rewiring in our body with different somatic practices. So utilizing like prayer, being in nature, and how when we're with our body and we're choosing new, anything that we're birthing into the world is going to bring up this wounding. So we're getting to the root of this lifetime. And when we get to our roots, we like pull the weeds, kind of like when you're going into a garden and you need to pull weeds, because if you don't pull the weeds, then the garden's just going to be like, it's just going to like be a sloppy garden. So if we're really wanting to nourish our beautiful garden, that is our body, we need to get to the roots. We need to get to the weeds. We need to get to the parts that like icky and dense and ick. So then we'll kind of go into like how this all comes back to coming home to the relationship to our body and how that's connected to the body of our Mother Earth. Like we are the body of the earth. We are the seasons. We are the elements. We are all these things. So what does the mother wound really show up as and what does it represent? Well, first, our relationship to our sisters, not just blood sisters if you have blood sisters, but the relationships to the woman in our life in general. The relationships that we've had to the woman that we've had in our life. Maybe there's people that we're not friends with anymore. I know there's a lot of women, not a lot, but there's quite a few women in my life that we went our different paths. And I can, in hindsight, I can see the ways that my mother wound was like a huge part of why I attracted these relationships. Jealousy, competition, gossiping, drama, you know, all the things that, especially that we went through in high school. But, even now we can experience these things. I know some of you are in like work settings, career settings where you're surrounded by this a lot. So just like the energy of this, like feeling into the energy of like competition and gossip and drama and like how that feels in the body. Like the body in itself is like, ugh. Um, so there's nothing inherently wrong with these things. Like jealousy and these things are powerful. Like we can do powerful things with our jealousy, but it's all about creating art and coming back to our somatics. So we're not projecting it onto, right? Like if I see someone on social media, like for me, like a big jealousy aspect of me is like when I see another woman like promoting her container and like she has like 100 comments of women that are like ready to join. And I'm like, I want 100 women to comment on mine, like ready to join, you know, like my little girl's like, what am I doing wrong? And like the ways that I can like feel into how that feels for me and remember that I am my own unique person. I am on my own unique path. Maybe I'm not even ready to hold a big container, you know, like of course I would love to have like 50 women in here, but maybe I'm not fully ready for that. And I can accept that. When I was marketing Emergence, I knew that God had the number already, whether it was 5, 4, 6, 7, 10, 15, I knew that whoever was meant to be in is what I had the capacity for, since this is the first time that I'm holding a group container. So of course, like my dreamer is like 50, 100 woman. But where Shanice is at, maybe Shanice isn't ready to hold that yet. So just remembering that when we see anything on social media or anything of that sort, like we have no idea how long these women have been on their journeys, you know, so there's no, I know a lot of you have journeys in the gym and working out. When you first started working out, you probably thought that you would never be where you're at now with your workouts or whatever it is. So the same thing goes for the ways we show up in our magic. Like if another woman seems like she's more magical or has something that we don't, literally that's so untrue. So the mother wound represents a lot of those things. It represents the connection to our bodies and the earth. Our earth right now is remembering herself, and so are we. That's why so many of us are like, I'm ready to reclaim my power. Trusting our intuition, our instincts, the primal nature of who we are, like the parts of us that like are just really like fucking angry and rageful. Like I was just thinking to myself this morning, like sometimes I don't want to be compassionate and empathetic. Like I just want to be resentful and be annoyed and mad. And I'm not going to apologize for that because I can't bypass that. I'm still compassionate and empathetic, but like sometimes you just want to like, you know, like over it. So trusting our intuition, being able to like move slowly, being with the slowness of our bodies. Huge one is our sexual energy and our creative life force energy. So from the time we were born, especially as little girls, like our innocence may have been taken from us, you know, when we were little girls, in the depths of that. We won't go into like the sexual trauma and stuff yet, but like the ways that that can really go into how we creatively express ourselves. She also represents our rest, our nourishment, and our nurturing, our ability to nurture ourselves. I know a lot of us have a strong inner critic that is like way stronger than our ability to nurture ourselves. So it's a continuous practice to be able to come back and be able to nurture ourselves. The mother wound is big in that. Our nervous system is the Earth's nervous system, and it's in the womb that our nervous system is developing. So we'll go into this, but we take on our mother's nervous system. So for example, my mom was playing basketball. Ask me how that felt growing up. And in general, even to this day, what it was like to be in the womb that was always active. That was always active, always. She was literally being like elbowed in the stomach, bro. And I was in there just like, ah, like she didn't even know. And a huge like wound with my bloodline is disassociation from the body. So it's just wild to me that my mom had no idea that she was pregnant with me. Like that blows my mind. For 6 months, she was so disassociated from her body. Like, let's take this in. My mom was so disassociated from her body, she did not know a baby was growing inside of her for 6 months. That is insane. Like when you really, and I know this actually, like, this has happened to other women. Um, and a huge thing with me has been, I'm coming back to my body. Like, it's no wonder growing up, like I was in sports, bodybuilding. I've chosen all these sports that kept me disassociated from my body, kept me restless, kept me going, kept me achieving, kept me accomplishing. I had no idea what it actually felt like to rest into my body until these past few years, where I was like, oh, I can rest back. I don't have to keep pushing forward. Um, so self-sabotage, our deep insecurities that we have, feeling unseen and unheard. A lot of this comes from our mother. You know, it starts with our mother. I know a lot of us feel unseen and unheard by our mom. Um, we grew up too early. So growing up too early may show up as hyper independence and inability to ask for support. That was a huge one for me until a few years ago when I stopped making as much money and I had to start like living with people, and I didn't have a car and I had to ask for rides and I had to like use other people's cars, and I've had to be helped with groceries. I did not know what it was like to actually be supported until I was in a place where I had no choice but to have to ask and to allow myself to be supported. So all these things that I put here, there's probably more. If you guys want to drop in the chat, if there's, is there one or two of these that really resonate with you, or if there's any that you can think of that maybe I don't have here that you would like to drop in? Because I know a lot of you like have already been deep on this journey. So I would love to hear if there's anything that comes up for you in terms of the mother wound. Don't be shy. Mhm. All of them, honestly. Jealousy ate me alive. Yeah. Nervous system being the same as my mom's. Yeah. I've met your mom, right? Yeah, okay. Like, I've met your mom. Yeah, that definitely makes sense. Nervous system. Yeah. I tend to find myself self-sabotaging when I put myself out there and I'm not received. Yeah, that's a huge one. It's a huge one. Yeah. That was a huge one for me for a long time. It kept me in chains for so long where I was like, oh, no one's receiving me. I'm going back into my cave. Like one day, 2 hours later, oh. And it's been humbling with Emergence, like, because I'm so passionate about my work, and I know we all are. Like, I'm so passionate, so it's hard for me not to take it personally, because I get twisted up sometimes in my wants to help people. And it sometimes it turns into me like pulling and tugging where I don't need to, because I just like want to help. I want to like, I get so excited. I'm like, come, come, come. In the ways that that shows up. Okay. So why our birth story? So one of you just shared that you can resonate with the nervous system being your mom's nervous system. And so what happens is that when we're in the womb, this is where we develop our initial sensory systems. Most of which, like most of the sensory systems that we're developing, are taking on from what our mother is experiencing. So example, like I'll go back to my example of my mom playing basketball. I was in there being abused. I didn't really know what to call it, but I was in there being like knocked around, right? So my sensory systems leading up to like before the past few years when I first started like doing like womb healing and womb work, I I mean, a lot of you followed me, a lot of you knew me when I was bodybuilding, a lot of you have seen my journey unfold. Like I there was no feeling peaceful or restful in my body, like at all. There was just like drinking, drugs, partying, hooters, bodybuilding. Like, ah! Like, and I loved the hard drugs, okay? Like, loved like ecstasy and like cocaine and Adderall, like anything that could like crack me out and geek me out. Like, I was on it, right? Because I didn't have a sense of feeling rested. I was like, crack me out, let's go. 400 milligram pre-workouts before the gym, like what? So funny. Still all great, but we want to come into harmony, right? Like, I'm not saying like I'll never do ecstasy again, but I can experience ecstasy in my body without the drug. And so it's all about coming back to that place. And so since this is where we are developing our sensory systems, this carries on with us in the ways that we energetically co-create our reality, right? So again, this isn't about getting anal about our thoughts and the ways that we're like co-creating. This isn't like basic law of attraction where it's like, I got to make sure that I'm in the perfect energy to. No, it's just about understanding at a deeper level that if something keeps happening, right? Like if we keep attracting the same relationships, if we keep attracting the same amount of money, if we keep attracting the same jobs or whatever it is, it's just something to tune to. It's just something to tune and pay attention to. Like, okay, why do I keep creating this? Why? And so the ways that we are experiencing reality can come back to the ways we took on reality via our mother in the womb. So just really tuning to, and this will be our practice this week, so you don't have to do this right now, but just really tuning to like the ways that we experience reality and like, oh, wow, like no wonder I feel so unseen. I was unseen in the womb, literally for me. My mom didn't see me for 6 months. And what's trippy is the fetus opens their eyes at 6 months. So when I opened my eyes at 6 months, that's like when my mom found out she was pregnant with me, which I think is just such a trip. Like that feels like shroom trippy for me. Like I'm like, what? Like right when I opened my eyes, my mom knew. Wow. So if our mom was stressed, we took on that stress. If our mom was emotional eating, we took on the emotions that were being suppressed. If our mom was hiding in some way, we take that on as a lack of safety for being seen. A fun fact that I'll drop in here is my mom was actually had a legit secret identity when she was pregnant with me because my grandpa was in the mafia. So she literally had to have a secret identity. She had a different name and everything while she was pregnant with me. And one of my deeper wounds is hiding. Like I either like won't let myself be seen at all, or I'll let myself be seen and then pull back. I'm like, okay, that was enough. I'm pulling back. I'm hiding now. Like I'm ghosting. I'm ghosting the world. Like that was a lot for me. um, and then there's even a more extreme example of our mother being abused in some way. Like maybe she was experiencing physical abuse, emotional abuse, psychological abuse. Um, I know that my biological father, I don't really know him, but I know that he was like crazy about my mom, like crazy about my mom to the point of like stalking and stuff like that. Which makes sense because that's the energy I got from him a lot growing up. We'll go into that when we go into like the father and the patriarchy stuff, but like the weird shit that we may have experienced with our father figure. But yeah, physical, emotional, psychological, and the ways that we felt this with her. So think about like, I know one of you said in the chat, like the ways that you take people's stuff on. Like that starts in the womb. Like that starts in the womb because we take on our mother's stuff. So of course we go throughout life and we take on people's stuff. It's like we have this like imaginary umbilical cord with reality, right? And so because we have this imaginary umbilical cord, we're like taking on reality instead of creating reality. Like take that in. Like we are taking on reality instead of intentionally co-creating it. I did this for a long time. I used to have crazy social anxiety to where I was like in a room of people and it's like I could like hear and feel and see everyone. And I like didn't know what I was experiencing because we're so like women are so psychically tapped in already that when we're not tuned in, we're going to like be in like a public place and be like, holy crap, especially like right around our periods. So that's why I'm gifting Womb of Creation with this because just making sure. Because as we like tune to this, like our bleed is a huge part of our ability to rest too. So our womb is where it begins and where it ends. All the time. So the wild thing about the womb is we're experiencing sensationally, yet physically can't see the external world. So when we're in the womb, like we're taking on what's happening at a deep energetic level, but we can't physically see what's happening. So like think about your relationship to being in the unknown. Like really lean into like what it feels like to be in the unknown, and how when we're in the womb, we're experiencing all these things, like we're having all these sensations and emotions and like whatever, but we can't actually physically see what we're experiencing. So talk about being afraid of the unknown waters, right? Like I like to think of the unknown as like being in like an ocean, and like we have no idea what's happening at sea level. Like we have no idea what's going on in that ocean. But it's really trippy to me because when we think about the unknown can feel the same. It's like we're like swimming, but like we don't know when we're going to like reach the top of and breathe again. And that's what it can feel like when we're rebirthing ourselves and stepping into this aspect. Let me make sure. It says Cassidy's. It says it kicked her off, but 1 second, guys. Um, so yeah, like I said before, this isn't about knowing all the details, but tuning to the subtle energetics. So for example, when you experience a ping of jealousy, there's something about tending to the root. So for example, if I experience a ping of jealousy, like jealousy has been a big one for me too. If I'm experiencing jealousy, but I understand that at the root of my experience that in the womb, I felt so unseen and unheard that right away, I can bring myself back to center and be like, okay, like this jealousy isn't like a black hole I need to go into. It's just my body experiencing what it knows. And so like when we can really simplify it, like, oh, this is just a sensation that I created, that I decided was jealousy. Now I can actually create art with this. Now I can actually do something with this instead of drowning in it. Oh my God, I'm getting so excited. My body's like right now, I'm like, wow. Because I've been wanting, oh, this is so good, guys. Okay. Like I wish I had this when I was like, oh my God, so good. But again, this isn't about knowing all the details because I know all of us in here are really freaking smart and intellectual and aware beings. Like we have no problem being aware of ourselves. I talk to all of you on an individual basis, and I know that you guys are really aware and smart, right? So this is beyond having the intellect. This is like becoming emotionally smart, um, and really tuning to the ways that our body is actually wishing to express. Um, so an example of like, I want to give an example of something that I've done recent. Some of you saw me on my story yesterday, the ways that I created art through like talking about inviting people to my birthday party and no one was responding or RSVPing, right? I was like, this has been bugging me all month, right? So I'm just like, I need to like do something with it. Like I need to do something with it. So I got on and I was like, you know what, guys, fine. Right. So I like got on and I was truthful about my emotional expression. And I would have never done that before, but I'm just like at this point in my journey where nothing is worth caging myself. Like nothing is worth suffocating or hiding behind a screen anymore. Because an older version of Shanice would have been like hiding behind my screen and been like, well, nobody wants to work with me. And it would have been hard to keep showing up, right? So I like to think of this phone is like being in a womb sometimes. Like it can feel like there's this big like wall that separates us from social media or from this like energetic world, right? Like it can feel like it's the end of the world if I share a piece of myself that I never would have before. And it's not a coincidence that we as humans have been programmed to to view the phone this way. And trippy enough, I truly feel that social media is a really instant reflection of our subconscious mind. And it like never surprises me that like I'll be thinking of something or considering something and I'll have all these ads pop up telling me get your high ticket client this way, like blah, 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 all these things that I'm like owning within myself where I'm like, I don't want to do it that way. I want to do it my way. And then my subconscious mind will project like, no, you no, this is this. So it's like a funny dance with like reality of like, ha ha ha, I see you and I'm not choosing that. Sovereignty, right? Coming back to our sovereignty, coming back to our uniqueness. Um, so our birth story was our initial emergence into this plane, and therefore making the unseen tangible may mean moving through the energetic birthing portal, right? So we're taking our tuning to our birth story. And when we're taking something like, let's say I got an idea, right? Like I'm connecting, I'm in meditation, I'm in a movement practice, and I get like this like creative spark of energy, this urge to create. I get this idea. And now I have to take that idea and I have to actually make it tangible. That can be the hard part because it's like so many ideas can come in, but how can I actually turn this into a tangible thing? How could I take emergence and actually make it tangible? Emergence just came through as a word. I didn't even know why. It just was like emergence. And I was like, okay, I'm going to write this down in my notes. And then like, it wasn't until a month later that I was on my bleed and I was like, oh my God, this is going to be a group container. And then it's like another layer, right? Because I was like, oh my God, this is going to be a group container. Oh my God, that's like my deepest fear. I don't want to freaking run a group container. But so it's like, notice how we're always met with like this dance and these layers. And so my intention is that you start to move through these at like a much simpler way instead of getting like caught into the psychoanalysis of it. Because if I stay too long in like, oh, I have a deep fear around hosting a group container, then I wouldn't have started marketing it. I wouldn't have been taking the action that I needed to take if I was just sitting in like journaling about it. Which I did for so long. Like you should see all my journal entries around like my fears and stuff like that. Like my journal has had enough of my fears. And so like it's one part. And then we got to like actually move it in our body. So this is why I'm going to have you guys be doing like these somatic practices, because the somatic practices allow us to be with the densities that naturally arise during an expansion, right? So we're reclaiming our power. Naturally, we're going to have density. Fear is always going to meet excitement. Like fear and excitement can feel the same in the body, right? Like fear and excitement can feel the same. So how can we start to alchemize this fear into the excitement that our body actually wants to experience? So just like the contractions during birth that lead to a baby being born, which like, hello, miracle. Like what? Like this energetic seed became a baby, a whole human that breathes and has organs and like what? Like that blows my mind. It also blows my mind that my mom's body took care of me, even with her not knowing I was there. Like that just goes to show you guys like how powerful our body really is. And it's not a coincidence that society has disconnected us from our power. The fact that our body can literally hold growing life for 9 months. And so again, like this is where it begins and where it ends. So what is happening? And what's really cool about this, guys, is crap, let me move. Hey, move. What's really cool about this is if you ever plan on having kids and like maybe you don't and maybe it'll happen, understanding this stuff at a deeper level also prepares you for like when you're actually pregnant, because we can be more in tune with, you know, how our baby is growing inside of us and connect to him or her at a way deeper level. Because this isn't just about us, like this is about like our descendants and like the generations to come. And so knowing like what the fetus is experiencing in the womb, even if it's just about understanding our own birthing portal, now we can take this with us when we do have, when and if we are growing a child inside of us. So what I thought was crazy when I was like doing some research on this like a while back is that the fetus actually responds to light and sound and smell and taste. So this isn't just like a random like growing thing inside of us. Like this fetus is starting to respond to light and sound and smell and taste. And then our eyes actually open around 27 weeks. So that part was like, I was just like, so it's like I took my knowing of that my mom wasn't sure, that she didn't know she was pregnant with me, and I connected it to the fact that like I was responding to light and sound and smell and taste and all the things. And that just like blew my mind. I was like, oh my God, like I was literally responding to reality before reality even knew I was there. I mean, I think reality knew I was there aside from like my mom and stuff. Because I truly feel like the ways that this really kind of goes into our prophecy. And it's no coincidence as well that I'm so in tune with the menstrual cycle, and my mom was actually getting her period when she was pregnant with me. And like now I'm like literally like menstrual blood, like wisdom queen over here. And in a way, it's like my soul knew that this was always meant to be my prophecy and my destiny. It's like I needed her, I needed her to bleed. I was like, nope, you're gonna bleed. I don't want you to know I'm here. Like, this is my prophecy. Sometimes I just like imagine myself as a fetus, you know, again, totally sober. It's just like where I go. Like, I'm just imagining myself like as a fetus, like in the womb, like being knocked around. It's just so fun. It's so fun. Um, and so it's the umbilical cord that connects us to the outside world. So although we aren't directly taking on external stimuli, we still are. So at a deep psyche and emotional level, we are developing our relationship to the external world. And so essentially the womb was our initial security and safety. So remember what I shared with you guys about how the root chakra is security, safety, strength, stability, and how when we were in the womb, that was like our most vulnerable, safe state because we couldn't be fucked with in there. Like when we're in the womb, we can't be fucked with. Even though we are indirectly taking stuff on, we are just like, we're just like being held. What? Like we're just being held and fed and taken care of. We're literally being given life without having to do anything. And so I really want you guys to like bring that into perspective. Like as we move through this, like these next 10 weeks, how much do we really have to do in order for life to provide for us? Because when we were born into this reality and we started to take on all this trauma and wounding and patterns and blah, 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 and you have to get a job and you have to, or I'm not going to say you have to get a job, but there's a specific job you have to bust your ass to make the most minimal, blah, 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 all these things that are like drilled into us. What if life was actually wanting to provide for us just like the ways that it was in the womb? We just need to be willing to surrender to that somatically at like the deeper somatic levels. So again, the root chakra is being formed there. And this is like our literal root of existence. So the ways that we exist in this world is being formed in this place. And so I wrote again here that the root is like our safety, our security, our stability, our foundation, and our strength. And it's at the base of the spine. So that's going to be a huge part of our practice this week is breathing into that, being able to come back and breathe into that place in our body daily, every morning, every night. Like we're going to have like the most basic practice in tuning to that. So an example of kind of like taking how that like goes on to everything. For so long in my life, I felt unrooted and restless when it comes to stability and security. I was always like reaching for stability and security outside of myself instead of like creating them within first. And so I struggled with being able to rest into myself and my body. And like I said, the essence of this evolved from my mom playing basketball and being active while I was in the womb, especially since she didn't know she was pregnant with me. So initially, like when I came into this world, I had no idea of rest. Like my mom wasn't, you know, like you'll see those mothers, like it still makes me sad. Like I'll see here in Costa Rica, especially like see these like pregnant mamas just like walking on the beach, like nurturing their belly and like all the things. And I'm like, it all could have been so different. I mean, it was all like perfect, but it's just so funny because it's like think about like the impacts that that has on us. And like we always talk of like the mother and her postpartum, but we never talk of like how we as the baby go through life taking on living in the trauma of our birth story. Like it blows my mind again, and just like it continuously blows my mind how our somatics and our energetics go back to this place of our birth. um I think I already put this, but I put it again because I wanted to ask you guys a question. So the womb was our shield, right? Essentially the womb was our security and our safety, so it was our shield from what we were experiencing. So, for example, my mom being on the basketball court and all those things, even though I was like sensationally taking this on, I was protected. I had a shield over me. So I wasn't actually being touched. Right. And so for most of my life, still to this day that I'm still practicing, I've lived with a shield over me, which is beautiful because we need a shield. We need the energetic protection. Turtles, you know, turtles have their shells. Skunks give off a nasty smell, right? These nature shows us that there's nothing wrong with having a shield. There's nothing wrong with having a boundary. And sometimes we overcompensate with with it, right? Like I can either overcompensate with my shield or use it as my power. Now to this day, I've embraced the fact that I can come off strong and that there's nothing wrong with that. And what I used to do is I'm like, oh my God, I have to be softer. I have to be softer. I have to be softer. And like that was just like not cute because then I was just trying to be too soft and I'm just not. Like I'm a strong woman. And I know all of us are in here. Like we all are strong women and that's nothing to apologize for. And sometimes that can, right? It's this harmony of strength and softness. Um, but this is just happens in experience. So I can't go too deep into this like right now, but drop in the chat like where do you protect yourself from the external world, like where do you feel like you protect yourself from the external world, if you can put any like context to it. Yeah, social media. First instinct was going to the gym because that's like my safety. Yeah. I just saw this other ones too. Nervous system. Yes, I didn't even realize I had anxiety until I realized I had it since birth. Yeah. Maybe playing a different role publicly. Yeah. Um, do you feel like for you who said maybe playing a different role publicly, do you feel like your mom put up an image a lot growing up? Like, do you ever feel like your mom put up any images or playing any specific roles? Lately, my bed, I sleep so much and just roll into my cupboard like a burrito. I love that. Yeah, working on shifting that and harmonizing it the last couple months. Yeah. Yeah, always tells me she had to be strong. Yeah, mine too. My mom prides herself on the fact that my like that she didn't need a lot of support. Like when we were growing up, I'm like, yeah, but it's great. Like when I lived with her the past year and she would say certain stuff, she'd be like, yeah, I would be fine. I'm like, Mom, don't even stop it. You don't have to do it all by yourself. Please just stop. Just stop it. Because I just like it was funny living with her because I would just it was just like dumbfound me that like, I'm like, oh yeah, there it is. There's why I spend so much of my life doing that. Um, okay. So this was me in the womb. I had to put a picture. So the umbilical cord was actually wrapped around my neck. Here's a picture of me as a baby. It's like I gave you guys some shrooms. So here's me in the womb. No, it's just like a random picture I got on the internet. I actually sent this to my mom after I had my panic attack. I was like, was this was me in the womb, right? And she was like, ha ha ha, yeah. But I wanted to share like different little aspects of my birth story. And I actually learned all these in little bits and pieces. So I didn't know all of this at once. And I truly feel like every time I learned something else, I was in a better place to receive it. And I also felt that it was like a gift from God, because there would be some things that would just come up in conversation with my mom. And I was like, oh my gosh, it would be like right when I needed it. I was like, that's why. Like I just learned that I was almost going to be a C-section. I was 24 minutes away from being a C-section. So I was born at 6:36, and the doctors were saying that if I was not born by 7 o'clock, that I would be a C-section. And the ways that this like goes into my life, it's so funny because I'm just like procrastinator AF. I was already finishing these slides this morning. It's so funny that it's just like I embrace this about me. I'm like, oh my God, of course I came right at the 24-minute mark. Like that just makes me make so much sense. I'm like, that's why I'm always like right on time for like what like I'm always like right when I need it. I was like, I'm not gonna be a C-section. I'm coming right now. Here I come. Even though I was a month late. So right here I put I was 36, she was 36 hours in labor with me, and I was a month late. Guys, I did not want to like I'm pretty sure I did not want to come into this abusive world, because my mom was like playing basketball and stuff. I was like, I don't want to, like, I don't want to go out there. It's like kind of crazy out there. I like, can I stay here? Um, so I was a month late, 36 hours in labor. Um, so again, like restless, pushed around via sports. The umbilical cord was wrapped around my neck. And I get choking sensations every time I voice my truth in a different way. Like every time I embody deeper in a way where I'm like really owning my voice. Um, like even leading up to Emergence, since I knew that I was going to be teaching these classes, there would be random moments where I literally felt like my throat was being constricted and being like held. My first ever like sound healing journey here in Costa Rica in 2021, I literally felt like I was choking underwater. It was like my first ever sound healing journey. I was like, what is happening? And I didn't know at the time that how connected this was. Um, So I'll experience, like I said, tightness around my neck during really expansive and contractive moments. So like in my past partnership, I even noticed this, like if I was talking about something with him and I felt uncomfortable, like I could just like, I'm just always like really feeling it in my throat. And the throat chakra has been a freaking journey for me. Even now there's like people that just walked into this co-work space and I'm like teaching right now, and it's like crazy, just like, like sharing your voice in a specific way and knowing that it's being seen or whatever. Um, so my mom had to also, she had to stop pushing because my umbilical cord was wrapped around my neck. She had to stop pushing. And I learned this kind of recently too. She had to stop pushing or else my heart would have completely stopped. So my heart, like my heart rate, my heartbeat was slowing. And so they told her she had to stop pushing and she had to turn to her side. And this was crazy when I heard this recently, because it was actually a huge part of these past couple of weeks for me. I was like, wow, I literally have a fear of what happens if I stop pushing. If I stop pushing at life, if I'm not pushing forward, then what will happen? Right. So I actually realized when she shared that with me that I was like, oh my God, that just like, again, makes so much sense. um, I also we're going to go into the cervix in week 3. And so we can talk more of this, but I was also rushed through the cervix. So since I was, 24 minutes away from being a C-section, we moved through the cervix when we're being born. and I was rushed through the cervix. So I put here like this sense of needing to rush, right? Rushing through. I need to rush. I need to hurry. Rushing through sexual encounters, rushing to get places, rushing to get things done, disconnection from my cervix, etc. The ways that this kind of like turned into like, I'm running out of time, right? That's something I really moved through this year too, like this feeling like I'm running out of time. That actually just came through as I'm sharing this. That's a new one. There's just like this feeling of like running out of time. I only had 24 minutes, guys. 24 minutes before I was a C-section. So I had to get there. I had to get there. I had to get there. So again, bringing it back to like the energetic experience that we are creating with our reality and how this is like interconnected. So just a little bit more here. What has this shown up as in regards to like the relationship to my body? Having like a weird sense of time. I either overestimate or underestimate time. I'm always like, I'm either like, oh, I have a lot of time, or I'm like, I don't have enough time. It's like, it's always like bouncing back and forth. So just practicing presence, right? Being late sometimes, like no matter how hard I try to be on time, I'm like always been the late one. I definitely get that from my mom. Pushing past my own boundaries and my limits, bodybuilding, feeling like not enough, thinking about how we get rewarded in our society for pushing through. The choking sensations every time I am deeper embodied. Challenges with actually resting without feeling restless. So that's something that I've really been able to train my body to do, but it was a big thing for me leading up to this year. Like leading up to like April of this year, when I really started to journey through this, I was so restless and I couldn't understand, like I just couldn't get a grasp on why I was feeling so restless, no matter like I was doing the healing, I was doing the inner work, I was doing all these things, I was journaling, I was all these things, and I was still like not feeling rested. Like it just felt like there was like no point where I would finally feel rested. So like not feeling seen, not feeling heard, not feeling felt, chasing stability, security, especially financially and in relationship to men. It's been a huge one. We'll go deeper into like our relationship to men in the next week with the father. So we're not like loading ourselves this week. But the ways that this shows up, right? Like we get this sense of, we're trained basically to get this sense of stability from the external world first. And it's not that we don't need the external stability, it's that we don't need it before we can feel it inside of ourselves, especially like when it comes to money. That's been a huge one for me, especially like doing this container in the ways that I have. It's shown me why I've been able to learn to feel safe with the minimal, because I'm like at this new beginning. And I know that God kind of put me in this place where it's like, Shanice, you're going to learn how to feel safe and secure in your body, because you need to run this container in this way. Like this container is not going to be about big bucks. This is going to be about you listening to this calling, not needing the big bucks, right? So like that was like a huge part. It was embodiment practice for me, because I'm like, oh, like this is why I had to learn these things so I can teach it. But now before I teach it, I need to really embody it. I need to really embody it. And then another one is like not being slow and soft with my body. There was so much rigidness in my body, like especially after bodybuilding years. I love how Jasmine's like putting herself in a womb right now. She's like, I'm wrapping myself up. I want to be warm. I want to be. Not being slow and soft with my body, it left a lot of rigidness. So those are just some things that we can really tune to there too. And so where does all of this kind of go into like our psyche, like at the psyche level, like getting into like the real like psyche cringy stuff? What does this have to do with that? Well, I mean, the womb is where our psyche is literally being developed, right? So we're like taking on these sensory systems and we're also developing our psyche. So we're like downloading, right? Via the umbilical cord, we're literally like downloading like our mother's psyche, right? Like we're like taking it on energetically. And so we get immersed with what our mother is taking on, and we are quite literally like born into these cycles and these patterns and these woundings and all these things. Like we're born into these densities. And so the ways that I see it too is like our physical reality is what we're projecting based off of that, right? Because that projection it started there. All we had was being able to project whatever it was. And I had to add this in there. I'm like, is there really an outer? I don't know. I'll let you guys lean in. Like, is there really, or are we just creating it all? That'll be a fun practice for this week too. Just like tuning to, I know that's been fun for me. Again, like I've just been like way more expressive on my social media, and like it's just been fun to like just like post it and be like, you know what, you're projecting this anyways, just like do it. You're creating this anyways, just have fun with it, who cares? Like who cares anymore? I'm just like over it, really. I'm way over it. Yeah, over it, done. I know you've been moving through that, Amy, at like your job. You're like, you know what, I'm over all these, I'm freaking standing up for myself. So our willingness to die to what was, to be reborn, right? So we're moving through this rebirth portal. We need to also be able to look at the ways that we've perceived up to this point. So that's kind of the point of these practices, is to be able to like, okay, here I am, like now in this moment, here's the ways that I really perceive this, and here's how tuning to the somatics can really shift how I'm creating, how I'm stepping into this. So all of us have the awareness. Like I know you guys are all really extremely aware. So the point is like of this journey is how we need to start taking this awareness and really allowing it to land in the body. Like if we're really going to embody like these deeper embodied versions of ourselves, it needs to land. We need to be able to like rest into it and like really allow it to land in the root chakra. Because awareness, another book, another thing of information, another Instagram thread, another. It's like, what's that? Think we're literally in such an information era, right? And so like, yeah, I'm providing like information with this, but this is providing context for the deeper somatics that we are going to experience in this next week. So that's why like in this next week, we'll have the practice to really tune to, right? So like none of this matters if we're not actually practicing it and embodying it. The psyche is so powerful. And like through this, like we're reclaiming different aspects of ourselves that we may have lost, like especially in like high school, right? Or as a child that like maybe kind of like we shut down, like the giddy, joyful, excited part of us, like the ways that those kind of like got shut down, like we're really reclaiming these parts so we can be a fuller embodied version. So we are in this body, we are the bloodline regeneration for our lineage. But this can only happen by actively choosing different and choosing new. So we literally regenerate the soil of our bloodline, which is like another cool thing. Like that actually came through when I was typing this out today. I was like, we literally regenerate the soil. So just like the trees' soil communicate with the other trees in the ecosystem, when we regenerate our own soil and we go into these like deeper densities, we are literally regenerating the soil of our entire bloodline without having to control them or what they're choosing or what they're doing or whatever, like what our moms are doing or whatever, just by us choosing, we regenerate. So our relationship to our bleed is also our relationship to our mother too. And so when we initiate ourselves through the reclamation of our authenticity, right, we are automatically healing 7 generations back and forward. Automatically. Because it's only all here now, like past, present, future, you know, it's all here now in our body. But again, this can only happen through initiating ourselves through this, right? The awareness piece can only do so much. Our body needs to be like initiated, and it's going to feel like literally, it's going to feel like it's like at its wit's end when we're choosing a different reality. It's definitely not going to feel like rainbows and butterflies. It's going to feel like, because the body's like freaking out. It's like, no, I'm comfortable. Don't do this to me. And kind of like going back to what I was saying before too, the root chakra disconnection is correlated with generational wounding. Because like think about it too, like so many of us are yearning for a connection to our roots, to our lineage, to our ancestors. And our root chakra is what connects us to that. And so like in this searching and in this yearning and in all these things, that's why we like seek information. That's why we seek for answers. That's why we reach outward for stability and security, is because we never learned, like we didn't have like that ancestral upbringing like our ancestors did, where they grew up like talking around the fire and sharing stories, and they had elders and all the things to share these things. We didn't have that. We're growing up with like social media. Scared. No, but we can change that. Social media is a beautiful tool when we feel like we can really like show up on there. I'm having fun with it recently. Having a lot of fun. Okay, so this is going to take us into, I think there's a couple more. Yeah, a couple more. So these last two are going to take us into our practice this week. Oh, what did I do? Go back. I need to go to the previous left. Did. Go back. There we go. Okay. Yeah, so these are going to take us into our practices this week. So what we did here and what we're doing here is we're bringing awareness, right? So we're bringing awareness and we're choosing new. So like I said, we can't just bring awareness. True change happens within the choice to embody new. Choosing new can actually be the hardest part for a brain that's so wired to the same habitual things. So this is why we get into the body. This is why we get into like our movement practices. This is why we have like all these things that I have for you guys, right? Like just being able to like get more animated with the body, because the brain is so like, it's like a barrier with when it comes to, for example, like first thing in the morning is like probably the hardest part, because maybe your brain is wired to like maybe getting on your phone right away or whatever it is. When we get into the body, even if that happens, we can get into the body and we can shift it in that moment. So instead of like feeling like, oh, I wasn't supposed to do this morning, or like instead of getting annoyed with ourselves, we just get into the body and we choose different right there in that moment. Maybe I've already been on social media for 10 minutes. I can still choose differently. It's kind of like, you know, like when there's like a struggle with like someone who doesn't like to eat snacks, but it's like when they eat the snacks, they eat all the snacks because they get like a little taste of it. And then they're like, well, already had the taste. Might as well go for the whole whatever. That's like what it can happen with our whole day sometimes. It's like, well, I already messed up this morning. Might as well get on. It's like that's where it's like in the moment, you know, maybe like I said, I've already been on social media or whatever it is for 10 minutes. I can still be like, putting my phone down, putting on my headphones and dancing, moving, whatever. And dancing and movement is probably one of the most like simple and profound ways to snap ourselves out of it and to bring us back. It's like almost too simple sometimes. So birthing anything into this world is going to bring up the birth story stuff. Like I said, we aren't just here to birth babies, right? Like we have projects, we have missions, we have friendships, relationships, different versions of us that are all being birthed into physical reality, right? The whole aspect of birthing something is taking it from the idea to actual physicality, right? So it's going to bring up like these contractions, of course, because of fears of seen, heard, felt, all the things. And so we'll practice this week. There's a rewiring that gets to happen via the somatic practices. So while being in prayer and being in nature is a huge part, obviously, like we're talking about the mother, a lot of this gets to happen in communion with the earth, with their mother. And so we'll dive deeper to this for the practice. And so we want to get to the root. So when we understand the energetics of our birth story, we are able to truly land in our root chakra and feel at home in our body where it really matters. Because again, the only reason why we want to keep reaching for our phones and keep reaching for these things is because we are wanting to like jump out of like that lower half of our body, which is where like the womb and the root chakra and all of that is, because so much gets like shoved away down there. That's why like emotional eating can be such a big thing. I know that's been a like, I don't really like that term because like food is amazing and it's not, it doesn't always have to be emotional eating. But that's why emotional eating is such a big thing, is because we're just like kind of like shove it away, right? We're trying to like put it back down. Like something wants to come up and out, but we're like, oh, like, no, you're going back in. So the whole aspect of this again is to like really land in our body. What's Shanice's sovereign field? What's Amy's sovereign field? What's Jasmine's sovereign field? What's Haley's sovereign field? Oh, right when I said that, she like disappeared. I was like, I guess that's her sovereignty. What was that? That was funny. Let me see if she's trying to, I don't know. Yeah. Yeah, it's such a big thing. It's such a common thing that's exhausted. They don't, I'm seeing. Okay, I guess there she is. Okay. Haley, right when I said your name, you disappeared. That was so funny. And yeah, to the like to the emotional eating aspect, again, it's like nothing to bring shame or guilt around. It's just like when we can honor the fact that like, oh, you know, that was just me. There was something wanting to like again come up and out. And I was trying to push it away. I was trying to shove it away. And I think that's why like understanding like the energetics of these things can be so cool, because we shame ourselves less and like we give our bodies some grace because it's like all they know. And choosing new is so scary. Like it's so scary until you do it and you're like, oh, why was I making that so scary? Okay, so the last little part before we go into our practice is our earth is a living and breathing being just like our body. So she has a body just like we have a body, and our body is her body. And we're here to commune with her, but first we need to be able to commune with ourselves, because how can we feel trustful and connected to the earth if we don't feel that within ourselves too? So it goes hand in hand. So she holds, nurtures, nourishes, feeds, and provides us energetic exchange, especially when it comes to our power. And when we tune to our body's needs, we can bond deeper with her. We can bond deeper with the earth. We can bond deeper with like the animals and the ocean and the lakes and the rivers and the trees. There's like a strong communication line that happens because our body is her body. And I'm gonna get geeky for a second because I love this part. So negative ions and positive ions. So the phones, like our phones and these laptops and like whatever, these give off positive ions. Nature gives off negative ions. Our body needs negative ions to balance out the positive ions that we are taking on from these screens. And positive ions from the phones can cause more depression, can cause more anxiety, can cause more stress, can cause more things, right? And it's just no wonder that when we get in nature, it falls away. Like it's no surprise. It's because we literally need, like from a scientific perspective, we need the negative ions. And so the negative ions as well as like the unseen charges that are around us, like when we're like walking on a trail or when we're by the ocean or by a lake or by a tree, our body is literally coming into balance. I actually, it's crazy. I never really pull oracle cards, but my friend had like a deck, and I actually was reading about this in an oracle card. So random. I was like, since when did oracle cards get all sciencey like that? But that was cool because it started talking about like negative and positive ions, and I was like, wow, you're nurturing my geeky brain right now, so hardcore. Um, but yeah, I thought that was funny. I was like, naturally, of course, the more that we're on this thing, the more that we're gonna feel like our whole like life force just got completely drained out of us in like 15 minutes, especially for those of us that are already super sensitive to energy. Like imagine like what's happening in here. It's like a jumping into like another reality. It's crazy. Like I like to visualize like this like cartoon, and it's like someone's like staring at a screen, and there's like this vortex of energy like coming and like swooping into, like you can't unsee it, and it just like blows my mind every time. Even when I'm on there for too long, I'm like, oh, like get me out of that. It's crazy because like our whole collective all in one place. That's just crazy. Opinions and perspectives and all the things. Um, I'm not going to go too deep into like the myth of Sophia right now because I don't want to like load you guys, but I am going to drop a link to you guys in Voxer where you can like read about it. But it's basically like all about like her being like a living being, and how we are literally like part of her body. And that's why like we experience like the energy and the sensations in the ways that we do. Like, you know, when you experience a knowing and you don't have words for it, but you just like know, like you just like feel it, you just like know, and like maybe it makes you sound like a little like you're like, I don't want to sound crazy, or like, am I just like overthinking? And it's like, no, like your body knows. That's the power in like really getting deeper into like this restful, somatically embodied place. Because like how can we honor that knowing more instead of gaslighting ourselves into like something else? Like we know. And so I was waiting until like I got through to kind of like land with a practice. But I'm feeling like our practice this week, and I'll drop it in Voxer so we can like stay accountable, is going to be really like first thing in the morning. And I'm going to be doing these practices with you guys because I know that I need this too. Um, or else I wouldn't feel such a strong calling to like lead this because I need it too. But first thing in the morning is going to be like, instead of going for like anything, before we do anything, it's going to be breathing into our root chakra and breathing into our root, the energetic field. Um, Even better if you guys can do it in nature and like actually sit on the grass, sit on nature, and really practice like what we did at the beginning of the call, really practice breathing into that and creating. I'm going to actually record something if you guys, if it would help you to listen to something. I'm going to record something and send it to you guys where I'm guiding you through like that energetic cording that gets to happen between us and the earth. Let me check the chat real quick. Yeah, I had it. Yeah, same. Yeah, I felt caught out first thing in the morning, straight to caffeine and gym. That's why I felt so good being on Bev Cart all day outside in the course this summer. Yeah, 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 yeah. That's been a big one here for me in Costa Rica, Haley, is it's caffeine doesn't make me as like geeked out here because there's so much like earth, but it's almost like easier for me to go to it in the morning because I like justify it. I'm like, well, it's not as like, it's not like that here. And like, I'll justify it. So I know I need this practice too. And I want to say 30 minutes, but if the first couple of days you feel like you can only do it for 10 minutes, don't force and push yourself. But by our call next week, I would love for all of us to be able to sit for 30 minutes and breathe and be with our root chakra. And it's really humbling because it's like, I did this practice not too long ago, and it's really humbling because you just see like how much you want to like grab your phone or jump to something, or it's like, or like something plays in your head. And you're like, I have to, it's just like kind of fun. And so it's like playing with how long you can sit there and actually breathe into that space. Um, before you go and do. So like that's going to be more of like the stillness piece, but then there's also like a movement piece. So even if you only have space for like one song, I recommend at least three. I'll send you guys like a playlist. Um, Even if you only have space for one song, really getting into a song, better if the song is like really like animated. Like if it's a song you can get like really animated to and like really feel it. Like this morning I listened to like Flowers by Miley Cyrus. And like that one I feel like I could like really like get into, right? It doesn't always have to be like, oh, like slow and like whatever. Whatever really like animates your body. So maybe you already have a song you can think of, but like I said, I'll send a couple or I'll send a playlist in the Voxer. So that's it, right? And then of course tuning to your birth, obviously like tuning to your birth story. Whatever you already know, like maybe like journaling or writing out whatever you already know. Um, and then if you can, like obviously connect with your mom and like or connect with your grandparents or whatever and just like ask. It's like it's fun. Be like, hey, like I would love to just like know a little bit more about like what was happening, you know, when I was being born. Just curious. My mom like knows why I ask. I want to bring my mom like on like a podcast or something because she just gets the most of me with this. I like randomly always ask her, I'm like, could you tell me more about like the parties that you went to? Like she's probably like sick of me at this point. She's like, she accepts me, but it's funny. She's like her 30-year-old daughter just like wants to know like what was happening when she was being born. I'm just curious. Um, but yeah, however you feel good with that, maybe you already have some details and that's enough for you to like lean into. You don't need like the full thing. Whatever details you do have. And then let me check the chat. So I'll drop these practices in the Voxer. I normally do my practices at night. Yeah, I know you do. But I think it'll help me so much more setting my day up with the softening instead of starting off with the chaos and pre and gym. With my metal, yeah. Guys, she loves metal. I'll be listening to like I release control and then she'll send me a song and I will not be prepared for it. It's like and I'm like I was not there. I was not there, but I love it. Half calf. What do you do? Like decaf and then like mix decaf and calf? Smart, yeah. Called out. Um, creating or wherever, no matter where we are. Yeah. Yeah. So what's really cool about these practices, guys, is I'm not in your body. I can only give you like these more basic foundational practices. And then what happens from there is what gets to be really cool. Like what gets to change about the ways that you go into your day and the ways that you go into social media or like whatever it is when you take this time for you first thing in the morning and you like give your body like this expression and this animation and like I've been doing like more stuff like what gets to change in the ways that you show up just from these like basic but like profound practices. Because I know like for me, whenever I'm really like intentional, it gets to completely change the ways that I like go into my day. That's why I really love that I love doing these calls in the morning because they really set us up for the ways that we go the rest of our day. Okay, so I'm going to close the chat and I'm going to stop the share. And I'm gonna pause the record or I'm gonna stop the recording. So if there's anything that you ladies like want to share that you don't want to be on the recording, we have like 10 minutes before. So let me stop.